A chill ran through the still air as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields. The vibrant hues of the sunset painted the landscape a fiery orange, a deceptive beauty that shrouded the secrets lurking just beyond the barn. The faint sound of rustling crops whispered through the twilight, but this serenity was about to be shattered. Three silhouettes emerged from the tree line bordering the farmland, a trio of robbers, fueled by greed and the thrill of the chase. Their jeans were torn and tattered, evidence of not just a life of crime but desperation. They had eyed the empty farmhouse from a distance, assuming the farmer was off somewhere, tending to the last of his chores or perhaps at the local bar. They were wrong. They didn't know that old Jacobs was no ordinary farmer. No, he was a man who had weathered storms, both natural and human, and had his fair share of tricks up his sleeve. As the moon rose high, illuminating the barren stretch of ground, the robbers crept closer to their target, hearts pounding with anticipation. Worn-out gloves clutched makeshift bags, ready to gather whatever riches this seemingly abandoned farm had to offer. They slipped through the cracked gate, stealth their only companion, each silent footfall weighted with expectation. But as they approached the front porch, an unexpected noise slashed through the silence, a creaking floorboard. A man's voice rang out, low and steady. The three men froze, their breath hitching in their throats. There, silhouetted against the faint glow of an oil lantern, stood Jacobs. He was a mountain of a man, tall and burly, weathered skin telling tales of decades spent tilling the earth. In his calloused hands, he held an old hunting rifle, steady and aimed at the intruders. "You see, I've been waiting for someone like you to come along," Jacobs said, his voice gravelly, yet surprisingly calm. The robbers exchanged glances, confusion mingling with a growing dread. They had anticipated an easy heist, but standing before them was a defender of his world, fierce and unyielding. One of the robbers, a younger man named Dave, bravely stepped forward. "Old man, put that thing away." But his bravado slid away under Jacob's unwavering gaze. "I reckon it's you who should be worried," Jacobs replied coolly, unfazed by the bravado. Each word dripped with a lifetime's worth of grit and wisdom, carving an unmistakable line in the air. The other two men shifted nervously, eyes darting between their leader and the farmer. Mocked another robber trying to find footing in the threatening situation. Jacobs grinned, revealing teeth shaped by years of hard living. Unbeknownst to them, Jacobs had prepared for this moment for years, like a quiet storm gathering strength. He had heard whispers in town, tales of bandits raiding farms, taking what wasn't theirs. So he had taken precautions. The rifle was loaded, but more than that, he had set traps throughout his property, hidden in plain sight, just waiting. As the tension thickened, Jacob straightened, eyes narrowing on Dave. "You want to play a game?" With a swift motion, he pointed not just to the rifle, but beyond it toward the tree line, a mere 30 yards away. The robbers exchanged panicked glances, the reality of their situation clawing at them. Dave stammered, suddenly unsure. "You might want to check your feet," Jacob said, a smile creeping up on his face that felt both menacing and amusing. The realization dawned on the robbers, but it was too late. They turned just in time to hear the sickening snap of metal on bone, a scream cutting through the night as one of the men stumbled back, pain radiating through his leg. The other two men shot forward, adrenaline coursing through their veins, desperate to escape, but Jacobs was relentless. He moved swiftly, leveraging the elements he had crafted. Yelled the remaining robber, panic turning his voice into a shriek. They sprinted toward the barn, eyes frantically searching for a way out. But every shadow cast by the moonlight held a secret, and every corner of the property hid a lesson in fear. Jacobs, attuned to the land he loved, followed with an ease that belied his size. He had cultivated this place not just with crops, but with knowledge and instinct. Each twist of the path was deliberate, designed to confuse and contain. As they reached the barn, the robbers swung open the massive doors, but they were met not with an empty space, but with the clamoring of hooves. Inside, Jacobs had a makeshift barricade, loose hay bales stacked high, with an old horse tethered to a post, its eyes wide and wild. The creature bolted upon their entry, causing chaos. Shouted one robber, lunging toward the animal, but the horse reared up, kicking out at the intruder and sending him tumbling backward into a wall of hay. The frenzy of the moment drew the attention of the other horse, a sturdy mare, who charged as the chaos unfolded. In the confusion, Jacobs found the moment he was waiting for. With a single motion, he bolted into the barn, rifle unwavering, not aiming to wound, but to protect what was his. "Get out," yelled Jacobs, his voice booming like thunder, striking terror into their hearts. They stumbled backward, eyes wide with disbelief and fear, retreating from a battle that had turned against them. In the midst of the turmoil, Dave, the brave one who had spoken first, found himself cornered. A wave of panic washed over him. The barn door loomed behind him, and the shadows felt alive. The old farmer stood there like a fortress, his rifle holding steady. He yelled at his companions, who were scrabbling to find a way out. But help wouldn't come. They were too lost in their fear, too caught up in their own frantic moves, stumbling over each other in their desperation. As the chaos unfolded, Jacobs remained calm, channeling a quiet determination. "I'll give you one chance," he said, voice steady. "Leave now and let me send you packing without a single scratch. Or you can hang around for the local sheriff, who will be here soon enough." Long seconds stretched into eternity. All three robbers were forced to confront the decision that weighed heavy on their backs, the sweet lure of a quick score, now marred by the taste of raw fear. Finally, with a shaky exhale, Dave waved his hands, teetering between defiance and defeat. "We're out! We're out!" They stumbled back, urgency surging in their movements as they turned for the door. Jacobs barked, securing their retreat with authority. They looked like scared animals, desperate to escape the trap they had walked into. As they bolted out into the open, the adrenaline and embarrassment propelled their feet into a wild sprint, barely registering the cuts and bruises they picked up along the way. The world outside felt different now, bitter cold and sharply real. Watching them go, Jacobs lowered his rifle just enough to catch his breath. There was a moment of stillness in the air, punctuated only by the distant hoot of an owl, as if the night itself had witnessed a battle of wills. Inside that old barn, amidst the hay and dust, Jacobs held onto a deeper truth. A man defends what is his, not just with weapons, but with courage. The robbery had turned into a test, one that revealed the strength hidden beneath a surface of vulnerability. As the trio fled into the cover of the trees, the farmer turned back to the chaos of the barn, shaken yet standing firm. Tonight, he had fought not just for his livelihood, but for the spirit of a man who had spent a lifetime working the land. In that connection to the earth lay an undeniable power, a bond that no amount of greed could shatter. The moon shone down brightly, illuminating the resolute figure of Jacobs as he began to piece his world back together. With a determined heart, he set his gaze upon the field where he had spent countless nights dreaming and working. It might not always be easy, but nothing worth having ever is. And in that moment he knew, come what may, he would always be ready. The night was wrapped in shadows, the kind that clung to the earth like a long-held secret. In the quiet heart of Rusty Creek, a small farm lay nestled among a patchwork of crops and grazing land, bathed in the faint glow of a dying sunset. The farmhouse stood sturdy and unyielding, yet on this night it appeared deserted, save for a faint flicker of light coming from within. What the world didn't know was that the farmer was waiting. 3 figures emerged from the tree line, shadows against the vibrant backdrop of twilight. Their footsteps were soft on the dirt, yet their intentions screamed loud. Adam, the leader, was wiry, with a nervous energy crackling through him like static. Beside him were Roy and Mikey, both significantly bulkier and shrouded in their own reckless bravado. They thought they were mere minutes from striking gold. Mikey whispered, glancing back toward the road as if the headlights of an approaching car might catch them in the act. "It's gotta be. I asked around," Adam replied, his voice low but with a hint of excitement that danced on the edge of panic. "Let's make this quick." They approached the farmhouse, the porch creaking under their weight like an old man's bones. To them, every whisper of wind was a warning, but to Adam, the thrill of the heist drowned out every caution. A momentary breeze swept through the air, rustling the leaves, and for a fleeting second a chill crawled down their spines. But they pushed the discomfort away. After all, this was surely an unguarded farm, and they were hungry for an easy score. They moved closer, huddled together as they peered through the grimy windows. Inside, a stark contrast to the outside world. A flickering light illuminated stacks of tools, barrels, and dusty furniture. "It's gotta be an old man or something," Roy said, his voice trembling with excitement. "Look at all that stuff." They took a deep breath and slipped through the front door like whispers of smoke, adrenaline winding through their veins. But what they didn't realize was that the old farmer, Jacobs, wasn't asleep. He was very much awake, and he was very much ready. Jacobs had seen many seasons on that land, his skin gnarled and weathered like the oak trees lining the property. He was not just a farmer, he was a guardian of his life's work, a man molded by resilience and courage. For weeks, whispers had reached him, rumors of thieves prowling farmhouses in the night, and he took those words to heart. So tonight, he waited, tucked away in the shadows like a looming storm. As the robbers crouched low, eyes scanning the dimly lit room, Jacobs tightened his grip on a well-oiled shotgun. He had it propped strategically against the wall, camouflaged among the darkness. The flickering light bounced off the weapon, casting a promise of protection. "This is too easy," Mikey muttered as he crept further inside. A clumsy step sent a tin can clattering to the floor, reverberating through the stillness. They froze, time stalling like a paused film, their hearts pounding in unison. "SHH." Adam hissed, but before the tension could unfold into chaos, Jacobs moved. With the grace of a man who knew his land, he stepped into view, his silhouette cutting through the dim light like a knife. His voice was low, firm, echoing like a distant thunderclap. The robbers jumped, eyes wide with shock. They hadn't expected an audience. Mikey's face drained of color. We were just." But Jacobs wasn't interested in clever lies. He took a step forward, his shotgun aimed and steady. In that instant, the robbers' bravado crumbled. Adam felt vulnerability wash over him, the weight of an outcome they had never considered. "We didn't mean any harm, old man," Adam stammered, desperately searching for a way out. Jacob's expression was unreadable, a mask of resolve. He had faced adversaries before, whether it be tempestuous weather or the weariness of solitude. Mikey, fueled by adrenaline, found his voice. "You think you can scare us?" Jacobs interrupted, his patience waning. "A few tools." The tension hung in the air, thick as fog. For a moment, the world fell silent, and it was just the four of them, staring into the abyss of choices and consequences. Suddenly, the realization of their situation gripped the robbers. They were outnumbered not by men, but by a land that was older, wiser, and protective. "Guys, let's just go," Mikey whispered, eyes darting around for an escape route. But Adam wasn't ready to back down. "We can take him," he said, half bravado, half doubt, but the fire in his voice flickered. Jacobs challenged, a subtle confidence radiating from him, forged in decades of hard work and respect for his land. In that trembling moment, he drew the line, the point of no return. The robber's bravado melted under the weight of the farmer's presence. Roy nodded frantically, urging Adam to reconsider. "Come on, man." Before they could regroup, Jacob stepped forward more forcefully, the ground shaking beneath his feet and the light reflecting off the barrel of his gun. "You've been given your chance." The robbers exchanged a frantic look, Adam's face contorted with frustration and fear. "You wouldn't shoot us." "Don't make that mistake," Jacobs replied, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. He had faced danger before, both from nature and people who didn't understand the land or its keepers. The robbers hesitated, but Jacobs took this as the moment of clarity he had been waiting for. "You think this is a game? That it's okay to invade someone's home? You don't know me." A moment of silence cascaded around them, filled only by the heavy breaths of fear and realization. This old farmer was not just a man. He was the embodiment of the land itself, fierce and unyielding. "Go on," Jacobs urged, the edge of his voice cracking like thunder through the simplicity of the moment. Panic surged through the robbers. Each one started inching backward, fear driving their movements. "Wait," Jacobs barked, his booming voice shattering their resolve. With the weight of vulnerability pressing down on them, the robbers stumbled across the threshold of the farmhouse. The heavy door swung shut behind them, a final punctuation to their reckless ambition. As they fled into the night, hearts pounding and legs pumping, Jacobs let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The calm enveloped him, and he lowered his gun, the gunfire of conflict giving way to safety and silence. Inside the farmhouse, amidst the grain and the tools of his trade, he felt the power of his choices ripple through the air. The realization sunk in slowly the true treasure of the night was not in bricks of gold or jewels, but in standing firm against unwelcome intruders and protecting the legacy he had built on that land. As the moon climbed higher, casting a silver glow upon the rolling hills, Jacobs allowed himself a moment to breathe. The air was crisp, hinting at winter soon to come, and he knew then he would always be ready to defend his home. In the vastness of the silent fields, beneath the stars stitching the sky together, he stood as a watchman, a sentinel of the life he cherished. The land thrived on his resolve, and he had proven that night that sometimes the quietest hearts held the strongest storms within. He returned to his windows, the flickering light now his companion. With the threat gone and the weight of fear slipping from his shoulders, Jacobs took a moment to reflect. The farm was more than a piece of land. It was a testament to resilience, hard work, and defiance against all odds. As profound silence wrapped around him, he felt invigorated, ready for whatever would come next, because tonight the farmer had waited, and he had won. The night was ominously quiet, the kind of stillness that wraps around you like a thick fog. Hidden beneath the shroud of darkness, 3 figures crept along the edge of a sprawling farm. The moon hung low, casting a dim glow over the fields, and the old farmhouse stood like a sentinel, its windows dark and uninviting. To the robbers it looked abandoned, a perfect target waiting to be plucked of whatever treasures it might hold. The leader, a wiry man named Adam, motioned for the others to follow him. Lurking behind him were Mikey, heavyset and jittery, and Roy, stockier but brimming with a false bravado. "This place is a ghost town," Adam whispered, his voice a blend of excitement and uncertainty. As they crossed the threshold of the broken-down fence, they exchanged furtive glances, the thrill of the possible heist lighting up their faces. But what they didn't see was the shadowed figure watching from the porch, a weathered farmer named Jacob, who had spent countless nights tending to his fields, always aware of the threats that lingered just beyond the horizon. With a heart shaped by years of hard work, Jacob had prepared for this very moment. He'd heard the whispers in town about robbers targeting farms, left alone while owners were away. So, in anticipation, he decided to stay, waiting patiently with an old shotgun resting against the wall inside his dimly lit home. His instincts told him it was only a matter of time. Back on the porch, the trio approached the door, now barely hanging on its hinges. Adam eyed the grimy window, taking a step forward as he scanned the inside. "It's dark. Let's go in." Before they could make any noise, Jacob stirred inside, the faint creaking of an old floorboard echoing like a drumbeat in the oppressive stillness. He gripped the shotgun a little tighter, feeling the weight of its familiarity in his hands. A man who had devoted his life to the land, he understood its rhythms and tales, and he was ready to protect what was his. As the robbers pushed the door open, the creak of old wood reverberated through the night, and they slipped inside, eager and naive. For them, this was a theater of ambition. They were chasing a dream of easy riches with reckless abandon. But every shadow held the secrets of the night, secrets that Jacob had learned to respect. Inside the farmhouse, the flickering of a lantern illuminated the dust particles dancing in the air, and for Adam, the sight felt hauntingly beautiful. It was a relic of another era filled with forgotten stories. He couldn't shake the thrill that tingled in his fingertips. "Grab anything you see," he urged, his voice barely above a whisper. The other 2 nodded, their greed overshadowing their instincts. They scoured the room, their hands moving quickly over antique tools and faded furniture, the thrill of discovery rushing through their veins. That was when it happened. A sharp clatter echoed through the silence as Mikey's clumsy hand knocked a can from a shelf, sending it tumbling to the floor. In that very moment, Jacob heard the disturbance, a sound that snapped him to attention. He could hear their whispers mingling with the tension in the air, and for a heartbeat, time stood still. With seasoned patience, he took a step into the shadows, allowing the darkness to envelop him as he steadied his breath. Roy hissed, his bravado slipping just a little. He paused, straining to listen, but the old farmhouse remained still, trapping their anxious energy within its walls. Adam waved him off. "It's nothing, just a can." But deep down, unease gnawed at them, an instinct that hadn't yet fully faded. After all, they were in a stranger's home, committing an act that danced on the knife's edge between desperation and danger. Suddenly, without warning, Jacob stepped into the dim light illuminating the room, the shotgun aimed and ready. His voice was a deep rumble underscored with authority. The three men froze, the reality of their situation crashing down like a wave. The thrill of adventure faded, replaced by the stark terror of being caught. Adam's bravado evaporated, replaced by a stutter. We were just." Jacob stepped forward, his eyes piercing through the darkness. Caught off guard, Adam glanced back at Roy and Mikey, who were wide-eyed and scrambling for an escape. No, we can explain." Jacob took another step closer, the weight of his presence palpable. "Explain? I don't need an explanation." His voice rang with the experience of years spent safeguarding his legacy, and he would not let thieves tarnish it. Mikey, panic-stricken, took a step backward, ready to bolt. "We weren't gonna take anything." "Leave," Jacob commanded, hanging his weight in the air. But Adam wasn't ready to back down. And just like that, the tables turned. Jacob's face, weather-beaten and stern, revealed nothing but resolve. "You think this is a game?" The nearby shadows seemed to pulse, like a heartbeat echoing the tension in the room. The robbers felt the chill seep into their bones, awareness of their own mortality creeping forward. In that moment, they realized they were not confronting just an old man. They were facing an avalanche of choices that could bury them alive. Pleaded Roy, his bravado evaporating. But Jacob stood firm, his heart steeled by the years of toil on this land. "You have their chance," Jacob said slowly. Sensing the urgency, Mikey urged Adam to run for it. "Let's go." But fear ran deep. Adam hesitated, trying to maintain some semblance of authority. "We can take him," he insisted defiantly, though even he could feel the doubt infecting his voice. As their hearts raced, Jacob weighed his options. He knew he didn't want to hurt anybody, but the stakes were high. "You don't want to make this worse," he warned, his voice just above a whisper. For a moment, silence clung to the air, a stillness that weighed heavy like the inevitability of dawn. The robbers exchanged troubled glances, desperation swirling in their eyes. It was a moment filled with emotional depth, where fear and pride battled for control. Suddenly, amid their uncertainty, Jacob's patience snapped. The command thundered through the room, and from that cascade of will, the floodgates opened. Adrenaline surged, and the robbers stumbled over themselves as they darted toward the door, panic roaring to life. As they burst outside, the cool night air slapped their faces, fresh but charged with the energy of their flight. "Go!" Adam yelled, nearly tripping over a loose board. They sprinted through the grass, eyes wide and hearts racing, desperate to escape the looming threat behind them. But behind them, Jacob stood firm on his porch, unwavering in his resolve. For a man like him, this wasn't just about preventing theft. It was about fighting for everything he had built, the essence of his family's legacy rooted in the soil that surrounded him. He shouted after them, the thunderous authority of his voice cutting through the night like a bolt of lightning. The words reverberated around the buildings, enough to send shivers down the spines of the fleeing thieves. As they huffed and puffed, struggling to create distance, Adam glanced back one last time to see Jacob still standing there, the silhouette of a guardian against the backdrop of the fading light. Reality hit hard. They'd come seeking an adventure, a quick score, and now they were running like scared rabbits. When they reached the end of the property, Adam felt a mixture of defeat and humiliation. It was more than just a failed heist. It was a lesson imprinted on their hearts, the consequences of recklessness, the haunting realization of mortality looming in the dark. As they ran toward the tree line, adrenaline pumping them forward, they heard the faint crunch of gravel behind them, and that last glance at Jacob stayed with them. An image burned into their minds, a protector, fierce and unwavering. The night stretched long, and retreating shadows whispered secrets around them, reminding them that they had trespassed against the sanctity of someone else's home. Under the light of a gentle moon, Jacob stood resolute, his breath steady. His heart swelled with the weight of courage. He had fought well, defending his land against the chaoses of the world. An old farmer with a shotgun had become an echo of strength against the frailty of ambition and greed. The journey back into the night reminded him that courage is not the absence of fear, but the resolve to stand tall despite it. As the moon glimmered upon the earth, he could feel the connections he nurtured with every seed planted, every storm weathered. And he smiled softly, knowing he had kept his legacy safe. On that forsaken night, under the breath of fate, a battle had been fought, a testament to the power of home and the unyielding spirit of a farmer ready to protect what was rightfully his. The night air hung heavy, a dense silence creeping across the landscape. Under the cloak of darkness, 3 figures approached a lonely farmhouse, their footsteps barely whispering against the dirt path. To the outside world, the old structure seemed abandoned, but inside, something far more profound was stirring. The whispers of greed twisted through the minds of the men outside, while within those walls a patient farmer waited, eyes like steel, heart like iron. The leader, a man named Adam, glanced back at his companions, Mikey and Roy, both of whom were equally nervous and excited. "This is perfect," he murmured, peering through a grimy window. No lights, no movement. He could barely contain his anticipation, the thrill of potential riches fueling his bravado. They imagined all the things they could grab before anyone noticed: tools, equipment, perhaps even a few old coins. "Let's just grab what we can and get out," Mikey whispered, his voice trembling. The glimmer of darkness reflected a fear he couldn't hide. Roy scoffed. "It'll be fine. We'll be in and out in 10 minutes. But the truth was, they were stepping into a situation far beyond their comprehension. As they crept toward the door on the other side, Jacob, the farmer, felt each heavy step resonate against his chest. He was not just a simple man with a few crops. He was a defender of his land, a sentinel against intruders. For years, he had heard rumors of thefts happening across the countryside, and he had determined to protect what was his at all costs. As the robbers pushed the rickety door open, the sound echoed through the stillness, breaking the night's hold. Inside, the lantern flickered, casting eerie shadows across the walls, outlines of a life filled with hard work and care. Each piece of furniture, each tool told a story, a legacy forged from years of toil. Adam stepped into the room, his heart racing with both excitement and dread. "See, nothing to worry about," he whispered, scanning the dimly lit corners. The others followed, hesitantly stepping deeper into what they thought was an empty home. But Jacob was far from unprepared. He had spent the evening in silence, methodically planning for an encounter like this. He had known that entering a stranger's domain uninvited held consequences, and he was ready to confront those consequences head-on. With every scuttling movement the robbers made, Jacob dragged in deep breaths, waiting for just the right moment to swing into action. As they rifled through drawers and knocked things over, he felt an old primal instinct awaken within him. The land he had cultivated held his sweat, his dreams, and he would not let it slip away easily. "Let's check the back room," Adam suggested, a glint of greed gleaming in his eyes. He made his way toward the darkened door, but just before he could enter, a creak echoed through the hallway, a subtle sign of someone or something lurking in the dark. Mikey's voice cracked, fear amplifying the usual bravado. "Probably just the house settling," Adam replied, though even he felt a chill creeping up his spine. From his hidden spot, Jacob could sense their unease, and he took a breath, ready to confront the intruders. The house had stood strong through storms, and he would defend it with the same resilience he had shown throughout his life. Just then, Adam twisted the doorknob, and the door swung open, revealing an unexpected sight. Before him, a figure emerged from the shadow, gun drawn and aimed right at them. Jacob's voice cut through the silence like a knife. He stood very still, a silhouette formed against the dim light, eyes piercing with unyielding determination. The sight of Jacob stopped the robbers dead in their tracks. Fear loomed heavy between them, freezing their bravado in place. Adam stammered, the bravado waning, regret creeping in. Jacob challenged, his voice steady yet seething with authority. In that moment, the tension crackled in the air. The robbers felt vulnerable, exposed under the old man's gaze. They had always fantasized about being clever, about outsmarting the old ways, but reality hit them with the force of a freight train. This was no unguarded farmland. It was a farmer standing firm, ready to protect what was rightfully his. "Look, let's just talk about this," Mikey pleaded, his tone shifting from bravado to desperation. "We didn't mean any harm." Jacob shook his head slowly, evaluating the desperation that spilled from their words. He understood desperation. He had lived through it many times, but desperation could lead to reckless choices. "You don't seem to understand what's at stake here. You're trespassing." They glanced at each other, panic etched across their faces. The thought of fleeing began to bubble beneath their bravado. Adam's mind raced, weighing options. "We won't cause any trouble," he shouted, desperately trying to project confidence. But Jacob wasn't moving. "Either you leave this place or you'll face the consequences of your actions," he said, resolved in his stance. The room fell back into silence, broken only by the heavy breathing of the trespassers, the weight of danger sinking deep into their hearts. Time hung suspended, and it was as if the essence of the house bore witness to the showdown. Suddenly, Mikey's foot slipped beneath him, tripping over an overturned toolbox. He stumbled, bracing himself against the wall. That sound broke the stalemate, sending shockwaves through the room. Jacob's response was instantaneous. He stepped forward, determination etched in his face. He raised the shotgun slightly, the weight of his command clearing the air of uncertainty. The robbers stumbled back toward the door, fear igniting their instincts. "Let's go," Roy shouted, his bravery evaporating into sheer panic. Adam yelled, desperation flooding his veins as they sprinted from the room, heartbeats echoing in his ears. In their haste, they nearly tumbled over each other, fear propelling them forward as they burst out into the night air. Outside, the coolness of the evening blanketed them, but it was no comfort. They tore through the overgrown grass, adrenaline igniting their legs as they raced toward the tree line. Every snap of a branch behind them felt like a ghost of the old man's fury chasing after them. Mikey exclaimed, scrambling to catch his breath. "Shut up," Adam shouted, guilt mingling with fear. The thrill of adventure had turned into an experience far darker, deeper than they had anticipated. As they fled, Jacob stepped back into the shadows of his home, the adrenaline crashing in waves against his chest. He didn't want to have scared them. He wanted them to understand the weight of what they'd done. Behind him, the farmhouse stood proudly, a testament to years of labor, trials, and triumph. It had weathered storms, and it would weather this too. Jacob leaned against the doorframe, breathing deep, his heart racing not just with fear but with the courage that surged through him, a man protecting his home, his sanctuary. Inside the darkness of the room, the remnants of the night began to settle. The adrenaline of confrontation faded, leaving him with a sense of triumph. But as he stood there, he knew this wouldn't be the last time he would face threats. The world outside was changing, and with it, the dangers lurking around every corner. In a nearby town, the robbers figured they could hide in plain sight for a while, but the weight of their crime hung on them like a heavy shroud. The thrill was gone, replaced by regret mingling with shame. They had come seeking easy riches but found themselves humbled. Mikey asked, flailing his arms as they paced at the edge of the road. That old man wasn't kidding. "It doesn't matter," Adam replied, his mind racing. "We just need to lay low for a while." They stood there, processing the reality of what had just transpired. Night turned to dawn, daylight breaking through the darkness and revealing the weight of their failure. They had come seeking fortune, but they left with nothing but haunting memories and lessons learned in the hardest of ways. Back on the farm, Jacob resumed his routine, but this time a fire burned brighter in his gut. He had faced down 3 men, and although they had fled, they wouldn't be the last to come. He made a mental note, honing his awareness, turning vigilance into a part of his daily life. The weight of what it meant to be a farmer settled deeper within him. It wasn't just about growing crops. It was about nurturing a legacy, protecting family history, and standing up against those who threatened it. Days turned into weeks. From his porch, Jacob often gazed at the horizon, the field stretching endlessly ahead, and the memories of that night would echo softly in the corners of his mind. Each new sunset brought a mix of fear and resolve, forever imprinting lessons learned in the fabric of his heart. For the robbers, the city streets pulsed with life, but no matter how lively the noise, it never fully drowned the sounds of their own guilt. Shadows lingered close behind them, reminders of a night when choices led them down a path they couldn't escape. Each day brought more of the same, a cycle of mundane routine, but with a heavy backdrop of their failure. They knew their journey had changed them, like footprints on a landscape, impossible to erase. As the seasons faded in and out, the farm continued, steadfast as ever. Jacob remained vigilant, cultivating not just his land but his own strength, ready to protect it with everything he had. The shadows of that fateful night receded into the distance, but the essence of the struggle lingered. Each sunrise brought new hope. For Jacob, it was a promise that he would always fight for his legacy, and for the robbers it became a lesson ingrained in their hearts, a reminder of the line between ambition and recklessness, between right and wrong. Life pushed forward. The old farmhouse stood still, witness to all that had transpired, a reminder that true riches lie not in what we can take, but in what we can protect, cherish, and cultivate through the shared stories of our lives. In the grand tapestry of it all, every thread woven together tells a story of strength, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The moon hung high in an inky black sky, casting a pale glow across the land. Shadows stretched long and deep, cloaking everything in mystery. Off in the distance, a trio of figures moved stealthily toward an old farmhouse that seemed to leer at them from the edge of a field. To the robbers, it appeared deserted. The windows were dark, no lights flickered, and silence wrapped around it like a thick blanket. They thought they'd found the perfect target, a forgotten place ripe for plunder. "Let's make this quick," whispered Adam, the leader, his voice barely more than a hiss. He wore a worn leather jacket, its edges frayed just like his ambition. Behind him, Mikey and Roy nodded, their expressions a cocktail of excitement and nerves, the thrill of the illicit coursing through their veins. They edged closer, their sneakers crunching over gravel and rustling the dry grass. Fear tinged with adrenaline propelled them forward. Mikey murmured. His eyes sparkled with images of old coins, forgotten antiques, perhaps even a rusted safe waiting to spill its secrets. Adam shot back. They were convinced nothing could stop them. To them, this was a game, a moment of danger that turned into a rush of adrenaline. Just a few feet away, inside that very farmhouse, Jacob, the farmer, sat in the soft glow of a flickering lantern, his hands wrapped around a weathered shotgun resting on his lap. Years of toil had etched deep lines into his face, but his spirit was unyielding. He had spent decades building this life, and he was not about to let three foolish men rob him of it. Jacob had heard whispers in town about thieves haunting farms, preying on unsuspecting owners. So he decided that when night fell, he would wait. An uneasy peace settled over him, but he drew strength from years spent battling the element storms, droughts, and often the harsh opinions of those who underestimated what he could do. He wasn't just waiting to defend his property, but also to protect the life he had built. As the robbers approached, the air thickened with tension. Adam reached the front porch, glancing back at Mikey and Roy. With shaky hands, he pushed the door open. It creaked eerily, sounding a warning to anyone attentive. Inside, the atmosphere felt heavy under the weight of their trespass. Dust motes danced in the thin shaft of light filtering through a grimy window, settling upon a forgotten furniture set in an old chair, a table strewn with faded papers, remnants of lives once lived. It held stories, history, and everything that made Jacob's home. "Come on, there's gotta be something good in here," Adam urged, creeping further inside, feeling the thrill pull him forward. The other two followed, but uncertainty flickered in their eyes. They had crossed a threshold into the unknown, and their naivety was about to meet the harshness of reality. Suddenly, the familiar creak of a floorboard echoed behind them. Panic flashed across Mikey's face. His voice trembled. "Just the house settling," Adam replied, trying to sound confident. But in the hollow silence, doubts began to flicker like candle flames. They had always thought they could handle anything life threw at them, but now a chill swept through the room, whispering to them that they were not alone. Behind the scenes, Jacob listened carefully, his instincts honed by years of hard labor and understanding the land he loved. He had faced hardships that could break most men, but fear had never been one of them, not when it came to protecting his farm, his family's legacy. He prepared his mind, emotions steady but heart racing, waiting for just the right moment. The robbers rifled through drawers, hastily shoving items into their bags, fingers trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. Each clink of metal echoed in the air, growing louder until it felt like a heartbeat in the silence. "Let's check the back room," Adam suggested, inches away from the door that led to the unknown. His voice cracked with urgency as he pulled the knob, the door swinging open and revealing the darkened space beyond. But just as he was about to step through, Jacob made his move. With practiced precision, he emerged from the shadows, shotgun aimed directly at them. Their bravado evaporated instantly. Adam's mouth opened, but no words came out. Mikey's face drained of color and Roy stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a chair in his retreat. "Get out of my house," Jacob growled, his voice unwavering, each word infused with authority. He'd faced many difficulties in life, but the warmth of his home was something he would never let anyone strip away. The robbers exchanged frantic glances, confusion mixing with fear. We didn't mean any harm," Adam finally stammered, but it was too late. Their game was over. "Did you think you could come here and steal from me? You've crossed a line," Jacob declared, the shotgun steady in his grip like a lighthouse guiding ships away from rocky shores. "Wait," Mikey squeaked, heart racing. But Jacob didn't lower his weapon. "You can leave now and I can forget this," he said, his voice low but powerful, the kind that sent shivers down anyone's spine. It was a moment that hung in the air, thick with an electric tension. Each intruder weighed their options, the gravity of their choices dawning on them like the first light of dawn. This was no longer an adventure. It had turned into a nightmare, and they realized they had underestimated the man before them. Mikey urged, his bravado crumbling under the pressure. Adam opened his mouth to protest, but the look in Mikey's eyes told him everything he needed to know. Fear had settled deep in their hearts, fear that spread like a wildfire. With quick breaths, they turned, scrambling toward the door. "Get out!" Jacob barked, the authority in his voice echoing through the home. They stumbled back, panic fueling their movements. Roy reached the door first, flinging it open, but not before Jacob stepped forward, imagining the flames of anger burning within. He had fought for too long to let this moment slip away. "And if you ever think of coming back, there are consequences," he shouted. The three men sprinted into the night, the adrenaline coursing through their veins like wildfire, enough to propel them away from the farmhouse and its guardian. They dashed through the fields, heartbeats thundering in their chests, the chill of night air biting against their skin. Roy gasped as they reached the edge of the farm. Adam yelled, still caught in the rush of fear. They fled into the darkness, stumbling towards the tree line where shadows swallowed them whole. Back at the farmhouse, Jacob breathed a sigh of relief, lowering his weapon. His heart raced, but not with fear. His pulse thundered with the force of defiance. It was a battle won, yet he knew it might not be the last. Later that night, as the moon cast its silvery light over the fields, Jacob took a moment to reflect. He had seen the robbers' fear, the moment they realized their plan was futile. It wasn't just about the farm. It was about something deeper, a respect for what he had built over the years. Meanwhile, under the glow of streetlights, the robbers huddled together, hearts racing but filled with the bitter taste of defeat. Guilt mingled with relief as they made their way down dark streets. They had come seeking riches, and now they were left with nothing but silence and the shadows trailing behind them, reminders of their failed attempt. Adam raged, guilt and frustration erupting all at once. Mikey shot back, still shaken, realization settling like a storm cloud in his chest. Over the next few days, the weight of that night lingered in their minds. The consequences of their decisions played over and over like a haunting melody. They could no longer distinguish the thin line between ambition and desperation, between right and wrong. Jacob, still high on the adrenaline of the encounter, took pride in the security of his home. The air felt different now. It was thicker, charged with the underlying reality that threats could come at any moment, and he was aware that he had to remain vigilant. As the weeks went by, the farmers around him shared stories of thefts and intrusions, of crops destroyed and homes broken into. Jacob remained alert, knowing he could not let fear take root in his heart. He spent late nights standing watch, ever cautious, imprinting memories of the encounter to help him prepare for whatever would come next. As for the robbers, they started to drift apart, each consumed under the weight of regret and fear. Adam tossed and turned, haunted by dreams of the old farmer staring him down, gun in hand, a constant reminder of their failure. Mikey found himself unable to look at the streets he once felt comfortable on. They felt like a trap now, a reminder that recklessness led to consequences. Months later, with autumn painting the landscape in vibrant hues, Jacob found strength in his routine. He farmed his land and defended his legacy. The experiences behind him had forged a more profound determination within him. He had faced down fear and emerged stronger than before. The three former robbers, on the other hand, spent the cooler months of the year trying to piece together their lives. Haunted by the moment, they learned resilience had layers that ran deeper than their impulsive desires. And so, as time passed, the rhythm of life continued, both on the farm and in the hearts of the robbers. Jacob remained steadfast, a sturdy figure against the deteriorating backdrop of past defeats, while the once cocky trio learned the hard way that sometimes the most valuable treasures aren't found in treasure chests, but in hearts that stand firm against adversity. It took time, but they began to realize that sometimes the greatest lessons are learned through hardship, and that respect for others and their hard work is what holds society together. Jacob's legacy, built from the ground up, remained intact, a testament to the spirit of resilience that lives deep within the heart of every farmer. A simple life, rooted in strong values, flourished despite the storms of life. The old farmhouse, forever a sentinel, continued to watch over the fields, a witness to both the gentle whispers of change and the power of human perseverance. And so it stood, unyielding against the shadowy whispers of darkness, ready to face whatever the future withstood. A chill hung in the air, wrapping around the landscape like a shroud. The moon cast an eerie glow over the sleepy farm, its silver light illuminating worn paths and overgrown fields. To the three men lurking in the shadows, it looked like the perfect opportunity, a farmhouse left unguarded, ripe for the picking. Adam, the leader, glanced at his friends, gripping his flashlight tightly, his anticipation mingling with nerves. Mikey hissed, eyes wide. He was always the anxious one, the kind of guy whose imagination could conjure monsters out of the most harmless shadows. "It's a farm, Mikey," Adam shot back, rolling his eyes. "We should hurry," Roy, the muscle of the group, added. He was peering through a dusty window, squinting into the darkness. With those words, Adam led the charge, determination painting his features. They crept across the yard, their footsteps muffled by the dry earth. As they approached the rickety porch, they exchanged glances filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. To them, this was an adventure, a thrilling heist that would bring in enough cash, enough stories, to make them feel invincible. But they were wrong. Inside, Jacob, the farmer, sat in the dim light of a flickering lantern, watching the shadows dance across his walls. He felt the weight of the night pressing in around him, but he was prepared. For weeks, he'd heard rumors buzzing in town about thieves targeting farms, pilfering from unsuspecting souls. Jacob wasn't just a farmer, he was a guardian of his land, and he decided that tonight, he wouldn't be caught off guard. The door creaked open as Adam pushed it ajar, revealing a dim living room filled with relics of the past. An old chair, a table cluttered with tools, echoes of joy and sorrow hidden in every corner. The moment the robbers stepped inside, the air thickened with an uncomfortable tension. They were intruders in a quiet world, each startled breath magnifying their own vulnerability. Mikey's voice quivered. A faint noise from the back of the house had caught his ear. His instincts were screaming that they were intruding on something far more significant than a simple break-in. "Just the house settling," Adam replied, but he was less certain himself. Every creak seemed amplified, a whisper warning them of their trespass. Unable to shake off the feeling of unease, Jacob listened closely. Each noise gave him strength, pushing doubt away. He sat quietly, feeling the familiar comfort of his shotgun resting against his knee. He had faced storms, droughts, hardships that left many a man broken, but fear, he wouldn't let that grip him. The robbers were hastily rifling through drawers, the metallic clang of utensils sounding like alarm bells in the air. Adam said, the thrill of the heist igniting a sense of urgency. They were racing against time after all. With every piece of stolen property, the darkness outside seemed to close in tighter, but their focus remained. The thrill of getting something anything overwhelmed their senses. He moved toward a door leading to the unknown, but the pressure in the air thickened, as if the very walls held their breath. Jacob seized the moment. He rose from his chair, his resolve firm, and stepped into the dim light that spilled from the lantern, shotgun raised. The confrontation was electric, a sharp crack cutting through the tension. The robbers froze, hearts pounding in unison, their dream of easy riches evaporating into fear. We were just," Adam stammered, words failing him in the face of danger. "You were just about to steal from me," Jacob interjected, his voice steady and low but brimming with authority. Mikey gulped, his bravado slipping fast. "We didn't mean any harm," he squeaked, but the panic tremble in his voice gave everything away. Jacob held his ground, the shotgun steady in his hands. "I don't care what you meant." The three men exchanged frantic glances, desperation creeping into their thoughts. They had come here expecting riches, and instead were faced with an unyielding man who represented the strength they underestimated. "Please, let's just talk," Adam tried, panic spilling into his words. Jacob thundered, his voice rising like a storm. The power behind his words resonated in the very bones of the house. Instantly, regret swept over the robbers. The thrill of the heist dissolved into horror, and they began to back away, hands raised in a futile gesture of peace. In that moment, fear took hold of Mikey, compelling him to act. He shouted, already turning to flee. They scrambled toward the front door, hearts racing, but that was when Jacob stepped forward, eyes fixed on Adam, who was still caught in the grip of disbelief. Jacob commanded, voice booming with authority. Adam's instincts kicked in at that moment. He turned and bolted, nearly colliding with Mikey as they rushed for the door, panic propelling them outside into the cool night air. They stumbled awkwardly over each other, desperate to escape the looming threat behind them. Roy shouted, adrenaline coursing through him. They dashed into the open field, the shadows swallowing them whole. As they bolted, Jacob felt a sense of relief washing over him. The confrontation had been swift, but the impact would linger. He stood at the threshold, breathing heavily but victorious, watching the trespassers disappear into the night. Back in town, the robbers huddled together, their hearts still racing, minds racing with what had just transpired. Mikey gasped, watching the darkened horizon as if expecting more trouble to emerge. "What do you think?" Roy exclaimed, still in disbelief. "I can't believe we thought we could just take what wasn't ours," Adam said, shame washing over him. For the next few days, the weight of their encounter followed them like a shadow, a lingering reminder that their choices had consequences. They'd gone to that farm looking for a thrill, but instead faced the reality that life wasn't just a game. Jacob, meanwhile, returned to his routine, the aftershocks of the event embedded in his psyche. The satisfaction of having protected his land coursed through him, but the underlying fear of potential threats never fully dissipated. As autumn painted the landscape in hues of orange and gold, Jacob found strength in the routine of farming, vigilance now a part of his life. He cultivated his crops while also standing guard against the unpredictability of the world around him. Each day brought him a little more peace, but he remained ever watchful. Months passed. The robbers drifted apart, their ambitions fading with the memory of the farm. Adam wrestled with his choices, every late-night moment spent reckoning with the consequences of their folly. Mikey found himself unable to shake the fear implanted by that confrontation. Roy, once the most confident of the group, arranged his life around a different code, one grounded no longer in reckless pursuits, but in the simplicity of hard work. The stark contrast between Jacob's steadfast life and the robbers' downturned ambitions became apparent with every changing season. As winter approached, the landscape transformed once more, blanketing the world in white, covering the remnants of their past like a layer of solace. Underneath the pristine snow, Jacob continued to cultivate resilience and patience. He had learned to trust himself, to stand against the odds, and he carried that lesson with him as he faced challenges through each dark night. Meanwhile, wherever the robbers ended up, they found themselves relentlessly reminded of that night, the shift in their lives echoing like a distant bell tolling. It was a lesson etched into their hearts, drumming home that there are consequences for everyone. For Jacob, every morning granted him a new opportunity, a fresh start on the land that represented not just his livelihood, but his spirit. The sun shone brightly over the fields, and with it came the promise of hope and resilience. Life unfolded as it should, carrying along with it the memories of fear and confrontation. The farmhouse stood tall against the horizon, nestled among the fields, an emblem of strength, a reminder of the farmer who wouldn't yield against the shadows. As spring painted the earth in colors vibrant and alive, Jacob found himself standing with an unwavering heart, watching as the world moved around him. A simple man with a simple story, he embodied the spirit of perseverance, proving that sometimes the most incredible battles are fought within the heart. And in the end, it was about more than just a farmhouse and the crops that fed his family. It was about the pride of standing firm against all odds, against those who thought they could take what wasn't theirs. The farm remained a guardian of his wisdom, echoing the lesson that fear can be faced and overcome. As the sun set on the fields, casting a warm glow over the remnants of winter, Jacob felt a sense of completion wash over him. He had weathered storms and stood against threats, and in doing so, he discovered the true heart of a farmer, a protector, a warrior, and a beacon of hope for those who dared to dream. Sometimes, it takes a confrontation in the dark to remind us of the strength that lies within. The night hung heavy under a blanket of stars, a deceptive calm cloaking the old farm. Silhouetted against the moonlight, a rickety farmhouse stood like a sentinel at the edge of the fields, its windows darkened and quiet. To the three men creeping through the tall grass, it looked completely abandoned, a perfect score. "Let's make this quick," Adam whispered, his voice trembling with excitement. He had always been the leader, the one to push his friends to take risks. But tonight, as a breeze rustled the leaves, a chill crept down his spine. Mikey, the anxious one, flinched at every sound, and Roy, the muscle, kept checking their surroundings, eyes darting nervously. Mikey whispered, glancing towards the shadows that loomed around them. "Shut up," Adam shot back, the bravado cloaking his own uncertainty. "The place looks empty." With that, they darted across the yard, hearts pounding as they reached the porch. The wooden boards creaked eerily underfoot, a sound that seemed to echo in the stillness. Adam pushed the door, its rusty hinges protesting as it swung open. Darkness enveloped them, the faint smell of aged wood and dust filling the air. Inside, time had forgotten this place, their flashlights illuminating the remnants of a life once lived. Cobwebs draped over furniture like forgotten memories, and the shadows whispered tales of years gone by. As Adam stepped in, an unsettling feeling settled in his gut, but he ignored it. "Let's check the living room first," he instructed, his eyes scanning for anything of value. But unbeknownst to them, they were not alone. In the far corner of the room, hidden in the shadows, the farmer, Jacob, watched and waited. His heart had been beating steadily as he prepared for this very moment. He had counted on thieves like these, and he had spent many nights maintaining his position, ready to defend his land. The gun lay in his lap, its weight a comforting reminder of his resolve. As the robbers moved deeper into the house, rummaging through drawers and turning over old boxes, Jacob felt a mix of anger and resolve brewing like a storm inside him. He had sacrificed so much to keep this farm alive. The memories of heartache and triumph flooded back as he gripped the rifle tighter. This was not just property to him, it was his legacy. "Look at this," Adam called to his friends, excitement rising in his voice. The thrill of the heist had them intoxicated, urging them further into their recklessness. They were lost in their thoughts of riches, not realizing the danger that loomed just around the corner. The atmosphere thickened as Mikey suddenly paused. He turned toward the sound of a creaking floorboard, his breath hitching in his throat. He asked, anxiety bubbling over. "Stop being such a wuss," Adam replied, though he couldn't shake the nagging doubt that clawed at him. The room fell silent, pregnant with tension. Then, just as they were about to push forward, Jacob sprang into action. With sudden ferocity, he stepped from the shadows, the rifle raised, eyes piercing through the dim light. Time froze for a heartbeat. The robbers froze, panic gripping them like iron shackles. Adam blurted, but the protest felt weak, flimsy. Jacob's voice was low and steady, but it held the weight of 1,000 storms. Mikey took a step back, fear widening his eyes. Jacob stepped forward, his posture unwavering. "You think this is a game?" In that moment, the reality of their situation hit the robbers like a freight train. This was no easy heist. This was a confrontation with a man who had spent a lifetime building and defending what he loved. The thrill of adventure faded into stark terror as they stood on the precipice of their decisions. "I didn't mean to," Adam stammered, but the words tumbled uselessly from his lips. Jacob commanded, the gun's muzzle aimed firmly at them. His voice carried the authority born from years of labor, and the robbers felt their wills crumble under its weight. Roy shouted, fear now like a knife twisting in his gut. They stumbled backward, hands raised instinctively, retreating toward the door. But in their haste, they knocked over a chair, sending the echo of wood crashing against the floor, a sound that resonated through the tense air. Jacob roared, stepping closer, aimed gun unwavering. They fled one by one, bursting through the door and racing into the night, breathless and terrified. The cool air slapped them, the moonlight guiding their erratic escape from whatever had lurked behind those darkened walls. They sprinted across the yard, hearts pounding against their ribs. Mikey gasped, glancing over his shoulder, expecting to see the farmer charging after them. Roy shouted, "Shut up." Adam urged them forward, adrenaline propelling them into the darkness. They could almost feel Jacob's gaze burning into their backs, an ember of shame igniting their panic. As the trio dove into the tree line, wind rustled through the branches, obscuring the sounds of their hurried steps. With each passing moment, fear gnawed at them, settling into their bones as they raced toward the road. The further they moved from the farm, the more their minds reeled from what had just unfolded. In the days that followed, the encounter haunted them. Each time they turned a corner, they felt the weight of Jacob's gaze. Each creak of a door brought visions of the rifle raised in defiance. They had expected an easy score, but instead, the fear radiating from the farm became a ghost that followed them into their waking lives. Meanwhile, Jacob reclaimed his life, but the thrill of confrontation lingered in his heart. He knew that the robbers might not return, but he couldn't shake the unease, the realization that they had crossed the line unnaturally, shifting the safety of his home into something vulnerable. Routine settled into his life like a comfortable blanket. He woke early each morning to tend to his crops, the rhythm of the land grounding him, fortifying his spirit. But a part of him remained on alert, training his senses to pick up on the smallest disturbances. The winds whispered warnings, and the sun's rise held secrets he couldn't afford to ignore. And in this newfound quiet, a storm brewed within him, a desire for resolution. One chilly evening, while Jacob washed up after a long day, a thought crossed his mind. What if they returned? What if they came back, emboldened by their failure to steal from him? The very idea sent a shiver down his spine, igniting a previously dormant fire in his gut. That night, he made a decision. He would not let fear rule his life. He would prepare, he would harden his resolve, and he would defend his home with everything he had. He gathered the supplies he'd need: old traps, spare tools, and the remnants of his strong spirit. Meanwhile, across town, the robbers sat together in a dimly lit bar, the muffled sounds of laughter and clinking glasses surrounding them while they hid away in the corner. The thrill of their failed adventure still lingered in the air, a low hum that hinted at deeper unrest. "I can't stop thinking about this," Adam admitted, his voice filled with anxiety. "Yeah, but we've got to do something," Roy said, determination sparking in his eyes. "We need to make a comeback." Mikey shifted uncomfortably. "You want to go back there?" His voice quivered with unease, but deep down the thought had crossed his mind. There was something thrilling about facing that fear again. "Yes." "Think about it," Adam pressed, excitement replacing the previous fear. "We'll go back tonight, be smarter this time." The conversation ignited a dangerous fire in the air, a mix of bravado and fear that echoed through their hearts. And as darkness fell again that night, they felt a surge of reckless courage washing over them, drowning out the lessons learned. Unbeknownst to them, Jacob sat in his farmhouse, waiting, eyes scanning the horizon. The moonlight cast long shadows that played tricks with his mind, leading him to replay the day over in his mind. And then he heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps crunching on gravel, whispers behind the trees, outlines moving in the dark. His heart raced as he steadied his breath and grasped his weapon. The robbers were back, emboldened by foolishness, ready to dive into the same fray they had fled from before. In that instant, he made his choice. He stepped into the shadowed room, muscles tense and electric, prepared for whatever might come. He would defend his legacy again, ready to face the storm head-on. The night was electric with anticipation. Would this be the moment he finally put them in their place, or would it turn into the showdown he had always feared? The echoes of their previous encounter hung heavy in the air, and the stakes had never been higher. The farmhouse stood strong against the encroaching darkness, a battlefront on the brink of chaos. The farmer's resolve roared within him like a wildfire. He wouldn't back down. Each moment stretched on like an eternity, waiting for the confrontation to unfold. Outside, the robbers advanced closer and closer, their excitement fueling their actions, blissfully unaware of the fierce guardian waiting just inside the walls of the old farmhouse. In the interplay of shadows and light, a clash between courage and reckless abandon was imminent, and destiny was about to unfold.